Hi there, I'm Pedro, and this is the 10x Your Character podcast, a dialogue experience in which I interview millennials and post-millennials from different backgrounds with the goal to inspire you to become a responsible individual in society. Try to catch me howling at the moon. Hey there, this is Pedro with episode 4 of 10x Your Character. Come on, guys. Super excited for you guys to be here today. Super pumped for this specific episode. It is so freaking good. I'm super pumped for you guys to listen to it very soon. I do want to introduce the guest, Derek Abikenari. He's definitely a really good friend of mine. We did attend high school together. And just to give a little summary of who he is, he's currently going to college. I would even consider him a philosopher. And, you know, he just shares a lot of value. He's definitely educated, reads a lot. He's a thinker. And just seeing him, the growth that he's done throughout his life from the time that I met him up until now, it's just crazy to see how people can evolve and change and become better than they were yesterday. And I think he defines that, the ability that we can change and move forward. And I'm super pumped for today's topic because it's something that, you know, it's super important to me, which is responsibility and meaning and how they interrelate. And there's no one without the other. But more importantly, that, you know, I feel like a lot of people in our generation run from responsibility. And we're going to be discussing why we think that is and what is, you know, ways in which we can start developing responsibility in our lives and, you know, gaining the freedom to make choices that are to our own interest and at the same time be responsible for the consequences of those decisions and face it like a responsible individual in society. So I don't want to take too long of your time. I hope you enjoy it. Please make sure to apply the message that you listen today. So let's get right into it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. Hey Derek, how's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. I'm glad you took time every day to be here today. Special topic. It's really important to me. I think the topic we're going to discuss today is something that it's not talked a lot, especially in our generation, which is the point of this podcast, right? Is to inspire and encourage people that are either millennials or post-millennials kind of figured out who they are in society and pursue that. But before we get into the topic exactly, if you can give a little background of who you are, what you do, so that people that are going to listen to this podcast can get an idea of who you are.
Okay, sure. So truth is, to be very quite specific, I moved from Iran 7 years ago from my family. I'm now a U.S. citizen, thankfully. But in terms of like a cultural change, I moved from Iran to a place that seemingly holds, in terms of its culture and economic circumstance and political value, is quite distinct than the values of Iran. And I adjusted pretty well. But myself, I love this country. I'm a big fan of the constitutional freedoms that we have in this country that make this country the envy of the world. And I never take my basic liberties for granted or use faith as a wedge to divide people. And I have had more than my share of good fortune and good health. And in terms of what I'm passionate about, or why is it even necessary to attribute this conversation in these very specific times, because I feel like whether you're an individual actor in a functional society, or whether you're just a citizen or who's just trying to come in terms with reality, there's certain important issues that are specific to the time. You know, in the year, let's say, Middle Ages or the Dark Ages or late Antiquity, there were specific issues that were specific to those times. And in the year 2020, there's certain fundamental variables that are unique to our time. And insofar as those variables entail, I would say, there is this idea of polarization where we've been balkanized into these different communities where there's great division. And I think as an Iranian, I could have a sense of understanding of how these social constructs relate and why is it that there's been such a cultural schism among people. And in a multicultural state such as the US, there are very important topics to be discussed in terms of why is it that There's this great sense of polarization and division between people. Yet there is this deep underlying yearning for a pluralistic account of things, where we can come together as communities and create a bridge where the better part of humanity can cross. In terms of my own circumstance, I'm very much interested in the human project, the human paradigm. You know, I feel like humans occupy a special realm in creation. And, you know, when we look at the natural world, for things to matter, they have to matter within the context of experience. You know, I give this example to my friends. I say, think of a universe completely devoid of consciousness. Think of a universe just made up of rocks. Think of a universe just made up of soccer shoes or soccer balls. Think of that universe. In that universe, no economic system or political arrangement would matter. For the changes in the universe to matter, they have to matter within the context of humans, individuals, whether animals or humans.
It's consciousness.
Exactly. That's the fundamental unit of analysis.
That it's like, okay, there's the aspects of how we experience and interpret the world, but it's even farther than that. It's without our consciousness, we would never be able to interpret the way we see life. But the goal of today is specifically focused on, you know, responsibility and the meaning, the correlation that I feel like a lot of people in our generation, they do not want to adopt responsibility into their lifestyle, because of course it's not easy, and a lot of times if you don't have honesty with yourself, you can think you've adopted responsibility over your life, but your actions don't really prove. But then we can get to that later. But to get it right into the right point, the first point, why do you think that our generation, instead of pursuing responsibility, they instead run from it?
See, in terms of my position in casting a judgment about an entire generation, I can only speak from my day-to-day interactions, and I don't want to be the person in a position to speak on the behalf of everyone. But I think, as it is with any challenging endeavor, trying to come up with a plan and construct a viable life for yourself is very difficult, and the interactions and ideas and events, all these make sense of our sense of social cohesion and communal sense-making. But I would say it's a strange thing, because I would like to answer that question by referencing what I consider to be a fundamental theoretical framework and unit of analysis. I would say that without beliefs, everything evaporates. You know, the individual.
There's no reference point to
exactly.
To,
you
like,
know, I would
see
say
why you're doing it, right.
Right, 100%.
Here's the funny thing, right? A lot of people as you evolve, like humans have evolved, right? Whatever people in the context of the Western world have conceptualized as, you know, this evolved humanity in which religion is that, right? It's like, what religion means is this set of values in which you try to live up to, and you see that you constantly fall short of it. And when I look at it at today's society, maybe they're not Christian, maybe they're not Jewish, maybe they're not Muslims, but they have themselves their own principles that they either made up or they've constructed from societal structure into their own lives, and they judge themselves from it. So what religion is there's this ideal, right? This divinity, and you have this law, right? This way of behaving in the world, and you see that you constantly fall short of it. Even if you don't consider yourself a Christian, you still fall short of your daily expectations or your principles that you try to live up to. So it's not like things have differentiated in maybe they changed names, but it's still the same.
You make such a great point. I think the bigger idea you're trying to get at, and this is something that can synthesize to what I said, is that whatever is true about the human condition, whether you're in Bangladesh or Somalia or the US, there's certain psychological frameworks where when you fall short of your responsibilities and you don't have integrity and you don't wake up early and use your imagination to shape the world to your desires, you can sense that intentional feeling of falling short to your responsibilities. And that's a psychological, humanistic element rather than something that can be anchored to your culture or sociology, your economic status or political arrangement. It's something more about the human element of just feeling guilty about having the entire day set out for you, where you're cooped up in your room on your couch playing video games, and every person goes through life in such a way. And I would argue, as I said, belief is part of the machinery by which we make decisions. The person who wakes up at 12 p.m. and just sits on the couch and tries to conceptualize about, oh, maybe I should just smoke weed today and have the entire day I should just have fun. Yeah. Every decision you could consciously think of is born out of your cognition, in which you believe that's what you should do. And I feel like if we want to make an influence at the millennial level, at the social level, communal level, it has to be a change within the context of beliefs. If you believe that there are things that if you could do that would greatly improve the quality of your life, you will helplessly do things. That is what it is to be a rational human being. What I'm trying to say is that...
Yeah, I understand your point of view. It's just like the reason why...
I'm sure the people who you cite as examples, if they get a sight of an ounce of what light means, or what best opportunity being born in this universe present themselves, they will want that. It's possible to not know what you're missing. And
I understand that, but I agree with what you're saying, and I think it's even deeper than that, because here's the way I see it, right? It's, okay, there's the belief, which is the start, right? The reasons why you're doing what you're doing, and the reference point you go back to justify why you're doing in your life, which is 100% true. But when I'm talking about responsibility, it means you taking responsibility to play out those belief systems into actuality in your daily life. But that requires responsibility, and responsibility comes, it's not easy to adopt. It's not just because, for example, I believe that, I believe in God, and I believe that we are created for a purpose, and that we have our mission in the world, let's say, that I'm just going to go wake up and play that out. Because there's things like my own insecurities, the way I was raised, the people in my life in terms of association and what they bring into my life, my emotional state, and there's so many variables that play a part when it gets to the more, I guess, micro steps of actualizing that.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point. And with respect to the principles of what you espouse, such as like the individuals within, whether this religion or the ideas that they should, the standards they should set out for themselves, I feel like the guiding principle is that when you're at a young age, or whatever age you are, you see from that perspective, and individuals and peoples, the self is not a stable entity. Who I will be or you will be in 20 years or 2 decades is something different. And what the fundamental thing is that at those times, it seems like what we're doing is the best. It's the best decision we could come up with. The impulses that initiate behavior to us in day-to-day trenches of adult existence, it seems like dishonesty is the best decision, and the fact that someone is unable to hold themselves up to the high standards of strength and sacrifice and integrity, it seems like, okay, well, I can get away with it. There's no consequence to it. And that itself is something that has insofar implication as your point of reference in that moment. Because if you are a father or you're a grandfather, if you're a person who's experienced decades of life, your point of reference is clearly diametrically different than a 16-year-old kid. And the 16-year-old kid who somehow, I'm not in a position to say, let's say makes unjustified or gratuitous decisions that could have tremendous harm to both him, his family, and people, at that moment, he's unaware of, or at least not living up to the standards that he should live up to, because it's not been fully encapsulated or realized in his nature that this sort of vision, this sort of characteristic...
that individual has not become self-aware to even try to conceptualize those things that he which does or does not believe. And here's the point that I try to come is there's two options, right? Either you adopt responsibility over your life and your decisions, or you don't. But each of them bring a certain result, right? Once you accept responsibility into your life, now you have a burden to carry, because now you have responsibilities in which you've looked at yourself in the mirror and made yourself aware that you do need to take care of. And that brings a burden, right? Because now you have...
And that's a lot harder. That's a lot harder.
That's a lot harder because what you can also do is not accept the responsibility and put it on to other people, or just sit in comfort or whatever it is. But that brings, or I guess like, be nihilistic, saying that life is meaningless and there's nothing more to me. So why should I pursue or take responsibility over things in my life?
You referenced something so important and fundamental, is that as humans and individual actors in a governing society, it's always easier, it's always more comfortable to do what is easy and what is at our disposal and comfortable. But what you referenced, this idea of living up to standards and responsibility and meaning and purpose and value and significance, that requires discipline. And discipline requires a change in your attitude, in your day-to-day attentiveness.
And a lot of those changes are
seem
going
frightening to
against
people.
It's not pleasurable. So we live in a society in which pleasure is it's like there's this hedonistic view in which if it does not bring pleasure, therefore you shouldn't pursue it. But in reality is that it's in the struggle of neglecting those self-centered desires that brings true discipline, and the result of it is actually more beneficial to you as a person, and also the people around you. But it's hard to see it at first, right? Because discipline is hard to attain.
Exactly, which goes back to the first point that we were saying about how if you really come to the other side, where you see waking up early, eating healthy food, exercising, surrounding yourself with the right people, those things could transform your habits and your life. Yeah. If you come into grips with that and realize that and fully encapsulate that, you would want that.
Mm-hmm. And what exactly? If you were to go to that future of self and like be experienced in that moment, you would want to be there. 100%. But then now that you've conceptualized what it is to be there, but now you need to become a person and start taking action towards getting to that point. Right. And that's where the process. We're talking about the result, and there's the process. And 99% of the people won't go through this process because it's painful. It's like, it's not only you're going to need to find people around your social surrounding in which are good for you and can, be true good critics of your life and try to help you grow. And you can start attending the gym and feeling better, in aspects of like your emotional health, your spiritual health, your psychological health, your physical health. Okay, all those things sound awesome. But in order to get to that point, that it requires a lot of discipline and actually neglecting things which are harming you currently. But here's the point, because let's say I'm going through something and I need an advice from a friend. Let's say I go to you and I say, oh, like, what do you think I should do with this and this? And you tell me, oh, you should do that. And I say, oh, but I don't want to do that. So I won't listen to your advice, and I'll go to the next person and they will tell me something and I won't want to hear that. But in reality, I find that a lot of us will reach out to people that are somehow inferior in terms of knowledge, or that will tell us what we want to hear but not what we need to hear. Because that's a true friend, right? It's not a friend that's going to pat you in the back when you made a mistake. He's going to acknowledge that you made a mistake, whether you like it or not.
I would posit that 100% agree with you. In my own case, I am on your side. And I think a good friend is one who does you service. And by speaking the truth and try to create a path for your friend who recognize his own shortcomings and foibles, your friend becoming a better person, more fruitful, well-rounded, complete, self-aware, self-conscious person, as a friend, you would want that. And by lying to him, you automatically disqualify him from that project. Yeah. The sensible project of telling your friend what he needs to do to improve the quality of his life is born out of the commitment to truth. If you're a good friend and you see your friend ostensibly has done some transgression where he's lied and deceived and cheated, or has done something seemingly unjustified, if you're a good friend, you would tell him, because you would be doing him a service by stopping at this point, at this age, and telling him, bro, if you're gonna spend the next decade together, or if I'm gonna see you in the future, I would want you to be a rational, sustainable person. And you would be doing him a service by telling him the truth.
Here's the funny thing, is that you do not know if a friend is your friend before a fight. Yeah. You only know if someone is your true friend after a fight.
Exactly, because if you've never fought, you've never said anything.
Exactly, you've never said the truth to each other. Because the second you tell the truth to someone who's running from the truth or does not want to acknowledge it, it's gonna hurt, because truth hurts. If, let's say, for example, I'm constantly going out there and lying and portraying that I'm someone that I'm not, and you come to me and you say, man, I'm gonna tell those people if you don't change and start acting like the Pedro that I know you are, instead of going and tell people that all those lies that you're saying. Let's say that's the case, right? At first, I'm gonna hate you, right? Because you're bringing
It's
light.
the first impulse.
You're bringing light into the darkness, and you're exposing the darkness. And the darkness, the dark part of you, those lies, or that person that you're trying to run from actually being who you truly are, it's not gonna be comfortable. It's not like, oh, thanks, Derek, for coming here and telling me that.
I think you make such a good point, because most relationships that are very deep, I mean, to us as citizens, it might not be clearly obvious how people interact with themselves. But if you're in a relationship with someone, whether it's your friend, your family, in such a deep and meaningful and sacrosanct relationship, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be fights, there's going to be disagreement, and that's a good thing, because you come to learn about the person, whether they actually have integrity. And it's very superficial to think that a good relationship is that which you pat each other on the back and flatter each other and always tell them what they want to hear. I mean, would you want that as a friend?
Yeah, matter of fact, if you have a friend, whether best friend or family or a loved one, and there's no arguments or fights or discussions in that relationship, there's something wrong.
See, 100%.
There's something deeply wrong. Now, that brings me to the second point, right? Which freedom is something that we all hope or strive for. And from what I've seen in my personal life is that there's no freedom without responsibility. If you want to be a free person, let's say, I'll give you an example in the concept of my business life, right? I work in real estate, short-term rentals. Let's say I wake up today at 8 a.m. I can go to the gym at 8 a.m. I can go to the gym at 5 p.m. I can go to the gym in the afternoon. Not everyone has the option to do that if they work for, let's say, a company from 9 to 5, right? I have the freedom to do that. But that freedom to be able to go to the gym at different times of the day comes with certain responsibilities that I need to take care of, right? Which is my work with my properties, making sure that the guests are satisfied, making sure that there's inventory, making sure that the occupancy rate for those people coming to the properties and renting are there. And I just try to make an analogy or an example to prove the point. It's like if you're searching for freedom in terms of choice, in terms of speech, whatever it is, there will become responsibility with it. You cannot, and here's the problem, is I see people striving to go towards freedom, but they run from responsibility. And you can never reach true freedom without accepting the other side of the coin, which is the responsibilities that come with that freedom in which you strive for.
Yeah, 100%. I'm so glad you said that, because it's a strange thing. Freedom as a concept could be quite elusive, because truth is, as many historians have seen or many linguists have said, the more order and discipline and structure and cohesion you have in your life, the more free you are. And that's a strange thing, because if you're free in such a way where you do whatever the fuck you want to do, and you have no behavioral guidelines, and you just careen yourself in pure whatever you feel like doing, you take away your agency. And when you have discipline yourself, you have order in your life, when you have certain habits, when you have virtue, when you wake up in the right time and use your imagination, and when you shape the world to your desires and assert yourself, when you have all those beautiful variables that constitute discipline, you actually create order in your life. And by having order, you become more free. Why? Because freedom is not in this narrow sense that you just do whatever you want. Freedom
can be like fantasized as like something like in which you have no responsibilities. You're just hanging in there and it's pure bliss, and it's just like this magical moment. See, right?
That's exactly. People who strive for that as a concept of freedom, they're fairly misconstrued what the concept of freedom means. Freedom is you so far as free as you act in accordance to a certain behavioral guideline. You know, I'm not free when I'm just in my worst nature. You are only free when you act according to a certain standard.
Who you are, and that's the thing. It's that you cannot become who you are unless you adopt a responsibility over your life. And if you don't adopt the responsibility of your life, therefore will not start striving towards becoming the best version of who you are. You will inevitably sacrifice freedom, because and that's when you start victimizing yourself and thinking that the world and people and society and community has put you in this position in which you're inferior and you can make choices. But in reality, it's that you've put yourself in this position so that you can just justify who you are. Because it's one thing to say, oh, I don't want to do anything with my life. It's another thing to say, oh, there's more to me, and I choose not to pursue that, and I will sacrifice that by remaining the way I am.
I think you make such a point about something that is so fundamental to human life, and that's the idea of agency. And I think what you're really trying to say is that we all live our lives within the context of uncertainty. Events happen, life is a very precarious thing. Things fall short, events happen, but there's something that makes us human, where we have an element to us that is what you're trying to say, this idea of agency and freedom, where you look at yourself in the eye and say, was I the best brother I could be? Was I the best person I could be? Did I do what I did? And could I look my friends in the eye and tell them, yeah, I stood up for you? That's the conscience. And that's not something that...
It's the right conscience, like... It's the moral guideline.
It's humanism.
Yeah.
It's the idea that humans have occupied a special realm in creation, where we're not simply physical realities, where we purely do based on hedonism or pleasure. There's something fundamental to us that makes us different.
Because here's the thing: it's a whole nother topic, but just it kind of relates to this because there's a lot of responsibility involved. It's like, I don't think people pursue happiness, but what they really looking to find is meaning. It's like, because happiness it's in a way, it's an emotional state, so it will come and go. The emotions flow, right? They're not constant. They're not like, they don't remain there for every second. And meaning sustains you throughout all those emotions, because it's a reason, right? Let's say, for example, if the reason why I started this podcast is because I know that there's someone out there who's looking to see that they're not the only one going through whatever struggles they are, and therefore I can help that person deal with their stuff, because they are listening to someone that is vulnerable enough to say that it's okay to go through stuff and fail, right? Even if someone later on said some bad feedback, say like, man, you're just a liar, like your content is awful, blah blah blah, that's gonna that could bring me sadness, right? Wow, like I put so much time into this and someone doesn't value it, right? But the fact that I know that I'm empowering someone to be able to take this content and apply it to their lives and become someone, that's going to sustain me, because there's meaning in what we're doing here today.
Exactly. That's enough for you. And
but it's not that I'm going to be happy all the time when I'm editing this, because I don't know how to edit it so well, and it's going to take a lot of time and it's going to stress me out. So it's not that the goal of this podcast, or the goal for my actions, is not always to just bring me happiness, which a lot of times it will consequently. But the goal of it is meaning. Like, am I taking action towards things that would inevitably bring the greatest out of me and people?
I think what you say is resonates with me a lot for two reasons. First being that all we have is human cooperation, where we come together as communities, look at each other in the eye, or recognize that some people might be vulnerable in the ways that we might not be, or maybe, and all we have is to try to provide a terrain in which they could feel empowered and secure and safe and like they matter. Wouldn't it be great if you make someone else be the reason, when you're the reason someone feels like they're pursuing meaning? I mean, there's nothing more valuable and has much more meaning than the idea of being there for someone and giving them this light, telling them that there's this areas to be conquered, there's this terrain to be conquered.
Because here's the thing, I'll tell you that there is a lot of hardships that I've faced in, like, let's say last year.
But when we're together, that's less.
Yeah, it's like there was hardships that I faced back in high school. There's hardships that I faced back last year financially, in my personal lifestyle, etc. And if it weren't for the people in my life, I wouldn't be making this podcast right now, because I'll be like still struggling through those. But there were people in my life that were unwillingly gonna let me stay in my failures and my hardships, and they always saw that there was more to me, and they poured life into me when I couldn't even see tomorrow. And that's what it is to be a person, is to be able to see that there's someone that it's not maybe at a current stage as you, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to be able to see, so that they can see that they're valued, and that they can take on responsibility, and that it's okay that right now they're not feeling all right, as long as they just keep going and take one step at a time. Because the thing that I see with social media and so much content is that it puts so much expectation upon you that you feel like tomorrow you need to be a millionaire, tomorrow you need to be the next Jordan Peterson, tomorrow you need to be that person. And you put so much pressure onto you, and the second that you see you fall short of those expectations that you put onto you, you feel destructed, you feel destroyed, because it's like, wow, like I didn't get that.
I think the only prudent path by which we can create a better future by everyone else is to first, should be common sense. We need to be honest with ourselves, and we need to systematically think about how is it that it can be a win-win, not just me winning the path of personal ambition and financial success, but also the people in my community. You're not a leader if you make someone feel insecure. You're a leader if you create more leaders and make others empowered. And I think the prudent path is to create a community where every individual human being thrives, and we come together as a globalized community where we address everyone's needs. And it might seem like a utopia or a far-fetched goal, but what other more beautiful task can we embark on, or what other beautiful journey can we take on our burden?
I love the point you talked about leaders, right? Because here's the thing. If you're a leader and the people that in which you're leading aren't becoming stronger people and becoming independent in of themselves as an individual, you're not actually leading them. You're just manipulating them to remain as they are, so that you can benefit of the fact that you can influence those people.
See, I personally don't think leadership can, in a rational sense, be summed up in self-interest or what serves you. A leader
is to serve others, whoever it is that is looking up to you. Your goal is to serve those people in a selfless way.
See, it's very strange you say that. It always struck me as odd when you're in a position of power, let's say, or position of authority or establishment, where you have certain narrative. It doesn't make sense for you to have that position yet be a tyrant and be unjust and unfair, because when you have that element that makes you unique, you are only so far as your integrity and your dedication, your commitment to the people you're trying to empower. And it's just strange to me. You could be a world-class scientist or a world-class scholar, but if you're only worried about your own reputation, your own narrative, your own merits, and not being the reason someone feels important and create more leaders, what is it that you want to get out of this position that you're in? If you sacrifice your principles for victory, if you sacrifice your principles for victory, you don't end up with victory, and you don't end up with principles.
But that's when the goal of that person is influence. The goal of influence is not to influence in itself. It's to help others figure themselves out, right? Because here's the thing. I can only tell you things, but you're the only person capable of actually applying those things and carrying out into your life. My goal as a leader is just to help you figure yourself out, not me change you. Because I don't have the power to do that. And who says I have the answers to your life? You're the one who has the most knowledge of who you're the one going to bed with you. You have your imagination. You know your dreams. You know your interests. Now, let's get to the third point, which is...
On a more serious note, when you said that, the specific thing that you said a second ago, I think is very important, because a real leader galvanizes you to feel the urgency of doing all those things. A leader comes into your life and shows you that what it is necessary, it's an imperative for you to create a journey for yourself. Surely we meet people every day, but a leader cultivates that feeling of urgency in which you think it's necessary for you to go out there in the world and create a better, beautiful, more sacrosanct narrative for yourself.
Yeah, and that brings us to the third point, which is exactly that, which is, why is it better to have a bad plan than to be in no man's land? Which is exactly what the leader is trying to say. It's like, you need to find direction towards your life, and no better way than setting goals for yourself. But in reality, if you've never set goals of yourself, or you're not self-aware enough, or you haven't reflected and looked into your heart or what you want for your life, etc., it's not like your first plan is going to be great. It's going to be awful. It's going to be bad. And you're probably not going to accomplish a lot of those goals right away because you're undisciplined. You're just getting started. And that's the point. I remember when I, probably 4 years ago when I started like trying to change who I was, right? Try to like make conscious decisions instead of just going with the flow of society. And I started setting goals, right? And I set unrealistic goals, which in a way you should always set goals that are above your reach, because that influences you to like go far faster and with more courage. Then it develops more, I guess,
incentive.
Yeah. But still, like, you need to you should never use those goals, at least the way I've seen it from my experience, in such a hard cold way. Like, it should be a reference point, because you will find out tomorrow, which we've discussed this earlier today, you'll find out tomorrow that things that you thought you knew about yourself aren't what they truly are. So maybe I say, oh, I want to be a pilot, and then I start taking that action towards becoming a pilot, and then I figured out my interest is something else. So it's like, if you had just closed out other options and you closed-minded and were tunnel vision towards a specific thing, you would have lost the intentions that came your way, in which you should have pursued. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think in terms of whether it's professional success or just improvement in a relationship, if you're not patient, you put yourself in a very vulnerable position. When you expect results so quickly, so fast, and so eagerly, it will take away the beautiful experiencing of just working bed by bed every day and deriving meaning from those experiences. A good friend once told me, your discipline serves you and your patience protects you. If you expect to be a world-class anything in the next day, tomorrow, by doing so, you put yourself in a vulnerable position, because you assume that it's just about this idea of becoming that. You're taking away that humanizing element of just being patient, getting to know yourself more. Maybe your interests change, who you are right now, and in comparison of 10 years, your interests change. But this variable of patience, that you put it as your habit, will serve you all the time in the next 10 years. Your interests in the next 10 years might change. But if you truly train yourself to be a patient and just and fair person, you already put yourself in a good position, because you have these resources by which you can utilize them in your upcoming years. One of my favorite thinkers said, people become builders by building, harp players by playing the harp. So too, we become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts. States of character arise out of like activities, and it makes sense to create habits that will serve you in the future. And by not being patient, back to,
like, you treat someone exactly how you treat yourself. Because here's the thing. Why is it important when you're setting goals to allow room for failure? Because you're going to fail inevitably. And if you try to hide that away from you, if you're so, I guess, misleading to yourself, and you think you're so competent that you're never going to make mistakes, before you even set your first goal should be change the perspective in which I look at myself. Because if you look at your life and the things you set out to do on a daily basis, you will continuously fail on those things.
Here's the thing. By assuming you've got all the answers and pretending like you have all the answers, you might not realize this, but you put yourself in a very precarious and unfavorable position, because then you have all the answers and there's no revision in your worldview that could give you a better life. If you assume you have all the answers, you guarantee that there's no better way.
I love what you said, like, about patience, like, even in a relationship, because let's say you started dating someone. If you don't have patience with that person, whatever they do, you see as something enormous and bigger than it actually is, because you're so I guess your expectations are so high of who that person should be to
It'll set
you.
you short in the
Yeah,
future. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it won't last. But patience allows you to continuously get better slowly but steady. And that's the goal. Like, life is not a sprint, right? It's a marathon. It's a marathon.
It's
like,
interesting you say that. But when you try to make it seem like it's a sprint, you might go so fast and so recklessly and negligent that
and
you might as well not only get injured or finish, you might as well miss out on the opportunity when you could have gone more steady.
Or you get burned out for life because you experience some things that will crush you so deeply. And in order to go back and recover from those things, it will take so much time and effort that you might just distract yourself from the healing by doing,
It's strange
whatever.
to me. You expect to go out in the world and do big things, but part of the variables that require you to do that is being the person you need to be before you could do those things. If you could tomorrow get on a plane and go to a business meeting in hedge fund managing venture capitalism and have all these business ideas, how can you do that if you're not first the sort of person you need to be when you can make sure you do a good job? You can't expect to have anything handed to you.
How can you do that if you have no integrity, no discipline, if you don't arrive there on time, which those people are going to expect?
You create troubles in the world. You're a liability.
Because here's the thing. You don't have let's say when it comes to the business world, you don't have a business problem. You have a personal problem that's manifesting in your business.
And it affects people's lives.
Yeah.
If you bring your personal issues that you have not so diligently worked out in these upcoming years, maybe in 10 years or 20 years from now, you end up in a place where those psychological foibles and shortcomings that you had resurface, and it could put a liability on someone else's life. If you didn't rectify your racism at a young age, maybe in 20 years when an Arab American family is being rounded up without the benefit of an attorney or due process, you violate their basic liberties because of your lack of attentiveness to the concept of race. The things we do have tremendous consequences.
Yeah, it's like everything you do matters. So that's
it's strange to me.
But that's the thing. That statement, everything you do matters, comes back to the start of this conversation. That's
a lot of burden.
You can only actually conceptualize that if your reference point suggests the same thing. Because if your reference point is like, I don't believe there's meaning to life, if I make that statement, it's
permitted. And then it's so much easier to live that way.
And that's when that you take responsibility away. When you make that statement that life is meaningless, what you're really saying is, I don't need to take on responsibility. So but here's the side of the coin that they don't the people that make those statements catch that it's once you say life is meaningless, all you're left with is suffering. Because part of existing suffering. But once you carry out meaning and responsibility into your life, now, like, let's say becoming a good brother to your brother, becoming a good husband to your wife, becoming a good member of the community, become a good brother of the church, whatever it is, becoming a better CEO, a better employee, whatever that is, becoming better in terms of intellectuality, going to the gym, bettering all aspects of your life. You're creating, not creating meaning, but those actions are actually manifesting meaning not only in your life but those people around you. But once you sacrifice that, all you're left with is bitterness, meaningless, which is really suffering, and that suffering doesn't end there. You get cruel, and you get bitterness in your heart, and you start treating people from those standpoints.
And I would say you're a coward person if you do that, because life is a serious matter. Things fall into place. One day you're going to be married, you're going to have a kid, and you want to be someone your kid can trust you in those difficult times. And if you don't, you can't half-ass your way through life. And by doing so fervently and zealously going out to life and adopting responsibility, you're giving people the permission to do the same, because by everything you do, you're representing what everybody ought to be. When you lie to someone or make them feel insecure or attack them, you're basically saying it's okay if they did that to you.
It's like the dad that tells the son, you should not lie, and then
it's strange.
Son, you should not lie, but then he receives a phone call and he says, son, tell him I'm in the shower. It's like your words preach a set of moralities, but your action doesn't.
Also, the more fundamental thing is that it might seem like common sense, but people spend decades or hours or times constructing, theorizing about what being a good person might entail. They read books. Oh, how to become a better husband, how to become a better wife. The fundamental thing is, how about the golden rule? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Would you be okay if I intentionally and deliberately discriminate towards you or the people of your community? You wouldn't be okay with that. So I had the same expectation with you. It's the idea of universalizability. Act in such a way that you would want others to act towards you.
And the funny thing is that that's cross-culturally.
It's a universal thing, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The Buddhists and the Hindus have something called the idea of eightfold path. You know, the Buddhists and Hindus, these religions don't so much rely on moral reasoning as the basis of morality, but they have this concept of desire as being the source of suffering. You know, the dukkha. You know what the Buddhists call the desire to always want to do in such a way where you're taking away that element of peace. They call it dukkha because to them it's all about human conversation, in which you recognize that all of the things that at this moment seem so transparently important for you are only enough reasons to give you happiness in the present moment. And the way it's interesting to me, the East conceptualizes about happiness is very interesting. They view happiness as not simply the reiteration of pleasure or having good enough reasons to be happy again and again. They view happiness as this idea of activity. It's not so much about what you get out of life. It's this activity of exercising decency and honesty throughout life.
Yeah.
It's about habitually standing up for your values and fighting for your vision and living up to the standards of strength and sacrifice that make us occupy a special realm in creation.
Come on. You're killing it, dude. Murdering it today. What would you say is a habit that you've implemented into your life that has, caused dramatic change towards good?
Honestly, I know this might seem very simple and common sense, but try thinking about being grateful. It's just strange to me. As an Iranian, I can appreciate that because, in this country, there's certainly issues going wrong. There's a lot to be going right. It's strange to me.
And sorry to cut you off, but when I feel like people take this so wrong, right? Like, especially in this generation, because people are so focused, like good vibes only, YOLO, all this concept. It's like when I created this podcast that I'm dealing with building character. In order to build character, you need to analyze what's wrong with your character so that you can stop from repeating those patterns and strive for good. When we're talking about issues of chaos or issues that need to be acknowledged and fixed, the purpose of it is towards a good ending. So I don't think that discrediting or trying to run from problems or issues that are clearly present in society will do any long-term good to anyone.
100%.
It's to be discussed and acknowledged and worked on.
Yeah, 100%. The human project, it just seems to me, at a fundamental level, it's a psychological reality rather than the purely economic or political reality. This world we've created, all these competing ideas and balkanized world of globalization. But what it is individual actors in a society making decisions. The society is comprised. My favorite sociologist, Max Weber, said that it's this very good sociologist. He said the fundamental unit of analysis in any society is the individual actor.
Yeah. And the individual makes
propagates. We have this idea of influence, and if you're not a good citizen, if not a citizen who embodies the best this community has to offer, well, that if everybody thought that way and everybody was like you, it would propagate in such a way where the whole idea of civic agency and civic polity and the idea of creating a just society would evaporate, because without
it's in a way it's funny because in a way by making that statement, it does come out that to the individual, that means that every single individual plays a part in the direction that the world is traveling, because you hold the power in your hands in a small way.
Don't doubt it for a second.
Yeah,
and
because you have influence over one person. Let's say let's say you just have influence over one person, and influence that in a negative way. That person has influence over more people, and they will, because of you influencing them in a negative way, they'll carry that on into others, and then look at the long-term effect of that. But watch the opposite. Imagine you're just striving towards influencing people towards good for their own sake, not just yours. Because if you try to influence someone for good, but it's not for their sake, you're really trying to better yourself, which you're not serving that person no longer. You're using them to serve yourself.
100%. And I think I watched a movie a while back. It's one of my favorite movies. Russell Crowe played in it. It's called, you watched The Gladiator?
I feel like I watched it.
He said a very important line. The movie is fantastic, but he said a line that I remember quite vividly. Before they were about to engage in a war, this gladiator goes out to his friends and he says, "Brothers, what we do in life echoes in eternity." And it's a lot of burden. It goes to show that every act you do is imbued with a certain of eternity. And you can either look at that and be afraid, or you can look at that and be excited, because we are the change we seek to invoke. Why not come together as communities and create a bridge where the better part of humanity can cross and address economic needs and political arrangements? All these things that you want to see in the world are born out of you waking up in the morning and doing the right thing. And Gandhi, there's no one more influential, I don't think, in terms of civil disobedience than Gandhi. And he said, be the change you want to see in the world. And it's at first, it's a lot of goal, it's a lot of burden,
but it's a good burden, and that burden
it makes life meaningful.
Without burden, you don't have meaning. That burden brings it creates the meaning in your life. That burden brings the meaning in your life. See, you cannot have meaning otherwise.
Yeah, you make such a good point, because even in terms of space, time, and causation, it's just like there have been I looked this up. There have been 190 billion people throughout history. This too shall pass, man. It's 2020 right now. It'll be 3020 in 1,000 years. This too shall pass. But why would you want to live a life in which you're not being the best version of yourself? Would you consider, be the story you want to tell?
And that's the funny thing, because
how could you live and have no story to tell?
But here's the thing: everyone wants to be their best version of themselves. But
I don't think. See, I'm quite skeptical of that.
I feel like deep down everyone wants to, but they don't play it out because it's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
It's a lot of. Yeah. It requires a lot of diligence and focus and attention and care.
A lot of virtues that need to be developed, and virtues aren't just developed overnight. They require constant care and adaptation and analysis and
how about start small day to day, and you'll be quite happy with the progress you make over.
Let's end it with Jordan Peterson. Start by cleaning your room.
Oh man, I feel bad that I'm sure he's feeling better now, but when I heard the news about him being sick, it just.
What would you say it's the one? I mean, I'm sure you have multiple favorite books, but if you can name one or two, what would you say?
It's about to be the one I'm about to get published. I'm really excited about that.
What?
In terms of favorite book, they're various
topics. It has
topic.
impacted your life towards maybe a similar concept that we've discussed today, or something that.
I like the classics a lot, so I would say. I like fiction a lot, so I would say Ernest Hemingway, the book The Sun Also Rises. Also, in terms of nonfiction, one great book that I remember very vividly that had a tremendous influence on my life is a book by Sartre. It's this French existential philosopher who understood the human paradigm very clearly. He wrote this book, Being and Nothingness, and he laid out the foundation of why it's necessary to make decisions in such a way where you're legislating principles. Mm-hmm. So for him, his philosophy was existentialism. I'm sure you like Kierkegaard and all that existential philosophy. Existentialism is not a dehumanizing philosophy. It's a humanizing one. Yeah. It says everything you do, do it as if it was the last thing you were about to do. And by doing so, you're legislating a principle of action. You're allowing others to do that the same thing too. That's why existentialism is a humanistic account rather than purely, existentialism gives you the idea of agency, freedom. Mm-hmm. And without
choice.
Yeah, and choice.
You
And
have
that makes
the power to make the choices in your
right.
life,
He's specific.
and that will dictate the future of what the people around you will look like and what you will
Or the fate
eventually-
of humanity. How about that? Or the events that transpire in the following years for the people around the world who need our help right now.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
I'll end it with this last quote that Sartre said in his book. He said, "Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you."
Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, you should check out this guy. I mean, he lived, I think, 1905 to 1980,
Freedom
75
is
years.
What you do with what's been done to you.
Yeah, I mean, his
Wow,
old book is even
that's
more beautiful
Yeah.
than what this quote. But
And just to finalize, how can people reach you if they, they want to hear more about what you have to say, if they want to discuss a certain topic they like?
I mean, based on the feedback I get on this, I like this a lot. I think I want to be the reason that people can become the best version of themselves, and they can sense that there is this beautiful terrain out there that they could appreciate, and this horizon of things that they could learn about and become better thinkers, better theoreticians. But what I want is to just take a moment and recognize that the thing that makes life meaningful is not so much about what you achieve or where you are. It's all about the activity itself. I keep mentioning this. I say to my friends too, the activity of waking up in the morning and exercising, eating the right food, eating healthy, saying the right things, becoming a better, more efficient person, that activity itself is very beautiful. It's very meaningful. And that activity should be your fundamental guiding cognitive principle.
Brings light into the
You know,
world.
it doesn't matter what you do. It matters how you do it. You could be a doctor or a lawyer, and you can do a lazy and shitty
lifestyle.
job, or you could be a teacher or a professor or a plumber, but wake up in the morning with such zealot and eagerness and desire and passion that you do such a beautiful job and you make someone else's life more beautiful. So how about everything you do it with passion, do it with integrity. And I don't want to sound like a moral arbiter, but it just seems like the individual would benefit a lot in so doing. And in so doing, you only realize there's so much to do. I don't get the idea of boredom. It's strange to me. Your mother needs help. There are people who need your help. Why would you be bored? How about galvanize yourself, get out of bed and try creating a plan. When you look back in a decade, we'll be like, wow,
Yeah.
I was that guy, now I'm this guy. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, what better?
The good thing about that is that you have the power to start that change.
Start now and never
Yeah,
look
yeah,
back.
exactly.
You have your entire future ahead of you. Instead of thinking about the past and where you went wrong, how about
Learn from those mistakes so you don't repeat it in the future, and learn the positive things that you've experienced in your past and replicate it into the future, which that will generate better version of yourself and the people around you.
uproot guilt and plant forgiveness, and tear down arrogance and seed humility, thereby making the present comfortable and the future promising. I mean, the world has just been humans coexisting with each other,
Yeah.
and we have the power to come together as communities where we can all thrive. It's not just about one person or
All of us, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be
yeah.
better if we all won? Does it have to be lost or win?
Yeah.
It's strange to me.
Yeah, I love that. And how can people reach you in terms of like if they want to speak to you, like an Instagram page or?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel that I make very specific videos about like neuroscience, philosophy, and sociology and
what's the name of
economics.
that YouTube?
It's just my name, Derek C. Abikenari. It's my YouTube channel. I joined the debate team. I debate a lot. But in terms of just reaching out to me, I'm always available, man. I have my phone number. I'll be more than happy to put it here. Anyone who's in this community, I'll be more than willing to be out there for them and be there. My phone number is 424-281-8429. And don't call me at midnight.
I'll make sure I'll include all those details in the show
Yeah,
notes.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was
But,
great speaking to you, man. It's good to see you.
It was
You look
lovely
good.
to have such an interesting background, and from knowing you for
7 years?
something like that, 6 or 7 years now, and just seeing the growth of who you were and who you've become. And,
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. The same goes for you, man.
And it just brings light into not just my life, but I think a lot of people that maybe don't see that they could change and become different versions of them, but by seeing that in your circle of influence you have people that are constantly adapting and growing.
See, I think
brings light.
alongside our famous individualism, there's another ingredient to the human saga. It's this idea that we're all connected as one people. If there is a child in South Side of Chicago who can't read or can't get the benefits that they want, it matters to me even if it's not my friend. If there's someone out there who can't do the things they want to do because of some disability or lack the health insurance or the means necessary to pay for their medication, that matters to me, and I want to make sure I do things enough which I can be the reason that person feels like they're important too. I mean, what is more important than giving back? You get by giving.
Love that. All right, brother. Thank you for coming again. I appreciate you.
Thank you. You too, man. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Hey there. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. I highly encourage you to go ahead and take the content in which you have just listened to and apply it into your life. I think it's very important for us as individuals to not just watch or listen to content, but actually get those ideas and concepts and lessons and apply it into our lives. Now, I would also request you to send us feedback. If you've liked today's episode or if you have not, please submit some information and tell us why. And also, if you like to hear about a specific subject, please feel free to message us and we'll go ahead and create content about that specific subject. Or even if you would like me to interview a specific person, make sure to reach me on my social media platforms, whether on my YouTube or my Instagram or my Facebook. I would love to, start a conversation with you and gain some feedback in what you guys are thinking about the podcast. So thank you so much, and I hope you continue working on becoming the best version of yourself.